You are Locked On Falcons Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another Locked On Falcons, Locked On Sports Atlanta postcast, where we are coming at you live immediately after the Falcons' Week 3 preseason loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, 24-0. I am, of course, Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman, joined as always by Jarvis Davis, the co-host of the ATL Day Ones podcast, right here on the Locked On Sports Atlanta YouTube channel and podcast feed. Jarvis, it was not a pretty night for the Falcons backups. A lot of conversation over whether or not we should have seen the starters. I know you and I talked earlier this week on Locked On Falcons that we did not expect to see the starters. It lived up to those expectations. Your thoughts on that now that we've gotten to see basically TJ Watt terrorizing the Falcons backups in tonight's action?
Like it was ugly, man. Like not matter of fact, let me switch that. That was ugly. Like it was just bad because at the end of the day, that's how people get hurt. Like you always trying to preserve, talk about preserving guys and all that stuff. Like that's how people get hurt. Like guys, TJ Watt going up against who was it? Tyler Vrabel, you know what I'm saying? Like who was in the game at the time? Jalen Mayfield, like. You're trying to get people murdered. Like you're literally going to be in handcuffs after the game because you're setting your players up for failure. Like you're not going to get a good look as to how guys can make the team, on the back end of this roster, who can play special teams for you or who can be that swing tackle. I going up against TJ Watt because, I know more than likely if he gets into the game, like you can get a good look as to what he's going to be going up against. But, like, you need to be able to compare apples to apples. Like, if you're trying to evaluate Jalen Mayfield or Tyler Vrabel or something like that, you're not gonna be able to get a good grasp as to what he's capable of if he's thrown in there. You know what I'm saying? Because you're going up against a A1 starter, like a league MVP type cat. Like, yeah, I understand that he might do that if he get into an NFL game, but like it's hard to evaluate dudes going up against guys like that because most of the time they're being evaluated off of guys of their ilk, right? Like, how do you look against, rotational defensive end / defensive tackle, on the back end of the roster type guy? That's how you're evaluated. And tonight we just didn't see that in that first half. That was awful. That was just bad.
Yeah, I hear you, Jarvis. I think you make some great points. I think you did bring up, if you are going to try to spin it in the Falcons' favor, hey, if you make this team, if you play on Sunday, you're going to be facing TJ Watt, right? Right. Tomlin ain't resting TJ Watt in October, all right? So it is a good way to see if anybody's ready to hold their own if they get in the lineup. The answer, I think, is no. so I think the Falcons are going to, I thought Josh Miles was okay, but like the standard was so low with the other tackles in this game that, like, Josh Miles could have been a 3 out of 10 and he would have been way better than probably everybody else.
Yeah.
So I think that brings us to the conversation we should have about Jalen Mayfield. Was tonight the last time we've seen him play in a Falcons uniform?
It has to be, right? Because we haven't seen any growth. We haven't seen any development because at the end of the day, as a coach that, Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot, they drafted the guy. So they're going to look for any type of improvement, any reason to justify keeping this dude on the roster. And I think when you look at how he played tonight, we talked about it on the show today at ATL Day Ones. It's like, this is a high stakes game for Mayfield. Like, the dude just didn't play well. He didn't play well. And when you don't play well in games like this, where you're going to be playing most of the game, if not all the game, it just shows that you're just not ready and you're not prepared to play on this level. And that's truly unfortunate because he was a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else to add, Jarvis. And it wasn't Jalen Mayfield going up against the Steelers starters. He didn't get in the game until halftime. So he was going up against the Steelers backups, and he still gave up a sack late in the game. And as you said, did not look well. So I think my biggest takeaway from this game is the Falcons are definitely going shopping for some additional tackle help. I don't know if they're going to
We need to get Terry Fontenot a calling card. Like, however, you need to get in touch with, opposing general managers. Bro, you need to pick up a calling card. I know Aaron, you probably not as old as me, but, I know you know about a calling card. Like,
Yeah,
what I'm saying? So I think Terry, we need to give him all the calling cards that he can possibly get and just work it out because, man, get on the phone right now because this was a concern we had this was concern like with these guys if they were going to back with these guys, going to rock with these guys. But after tonight, yeah, man, it's time. It's okay, and it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to move on from your mistakes. Like the last regime, their problem was like when they realized that guys couldn't play, they stuck with them and continued to stick with them and tried to figure out ways to change positions and
triple down,
quadruple down because like I know what I'm doing. I know how to evaluate talent. Yeah, you probably do, but you're not 100%. And when you realize you're not 100%, that's where I feel like there's that growth. And I think that with Jalen Mayfield being on that list of cuts, we'll see some really quick growth from Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot saying, hey, you know what? We missed on this one.
Yeah. Well, one player I don't think is going to be on that list of cuts, that's going to be DeMarco Hellams. I thought he played reasonably well. I mean, there weren't really any standouts on defense when you lose a game 24-0, and the Steelers starters just basically, Kenny Pickett was looking like he should have been the #1 pick.
Right, exactly.
He was out there dropping dimes to George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Going up against Breon Borders and Natron Book. So it was a tough night for the Falcons starting defense. I should use air quotes, starting defense. But I thought the thing that stood out about Hellams was special teams, right? With Jesse Bates, with Jalen Hawkins, with Richie Grant, things have to go very wrong for the Falcons if DeMarco Hellams is playing on Sundays on defense, right? So he needs to carve out a role on special teams. We've seen that kind of battle back and forth between him and Micah Abernathy. I thought the thing that stood out to me tonight was Abernathy the first 2 weeks of getting all the snaps at personal protector on the punt team. And then they moved Abernathy out to gunner, and they had Hellams as the personal protector. So they're showing that, okay, Hellams can do more things. You saw him make a couple of tackles. You saw Abernathy out there as a gunner. You need that gunner now that potentially Kadero Hodge might be down for the first couple of games of the season, and he's like their ace gunner on that punt coverage team. So I think both of those guys did enough to make the roster just based off of their special teams value. Not a whole lot of positives from the Falcons offense, defense, but I thought the special teams, at least they were out there doing their job and looking like they belonged out there. And I think Hellams and both Micah Abernathy showed that tonight. That's really the only positive I have.
Right. I mean, to be honest, I'm with you because Michael Abernathy has had a good training camp. He has a solid training camp. And when you think about, being in that second wave of safeties, when Jalen Hawkins and when Richard Grant and Jesse Bates are out of the game, like you can start to see him. They can try to work him in on that standpoint. But at the end of the day, be quite honest, that's how these guys go. That's the only way these guys gonna make a team. Like you gotta be a dog on special teams. You gotta be able to step in there. Like you mentioned Cordero Hodge, being out. That's an opportunity. Like that's an opportunity for one of those guys to make the final 53 because we know if for some strange reason DeMarco Hellams gets cut, we know he's going on that practice squad. But to be honest with you, like a team might snatch him up because like you see that value. He already has the pedigree of coming from Alabama. And then, he got drafted super late, and you seen him make plays in each game, and you see that, he can play special team as well. He doesn't have to actually be on in the starting 11 for the defense. So that means I'm finding value from a special teams standpoint, a guy who's capable of being on the field by making plays. He's on the special team aspect of it. And then if somebody gets hurt, we could probably throw him in there. He can probably be respectable as well on that avenue as well. So I think DeMarco Hellams made himself some money. I feel like he's put himself on this 53-man roster and say, you know what? I might not be able to get on the field at safety, but I damn sure can do my doggone thing on special teams, man.
Yeah. I know there was another secondary play you wanted to put shout out to, Jarvis, before we duck out of here. Clark Phillips, Falcons rookie. We didn't get to see him the first preseason game against Miami due to him getting nicked up in those joint practices. Came out last week against Cincinnati, thought he played well. Came out tonight against Pittsburgh, thought he played well again. Especially for me, watching Clark Phillips was the run support, right? You saw some good open field tackles from him, and that's important for a nickel cornerback because – you know, when defenses go from their base defense to their nickel, they're taking a linebacker off the field. They're putting a cornerback out there. And especially with a player like Clark Phillips, who's, you know, like 180 pounds soaking wet, you know, he's not the biggest guy out there.
5'7.5".
So, you know, there's certain teams out there that would love to get you into your nickel defense, get 3 wide receivers out there and just pound the ball down your throat right at that guy. And Clark Phillips showing that he can make some of those tackles. He can hold up and run support, I think was something really important to see from him tonight.
Yeah, it was cool to see young guys get out there and play, right? You know, it's funny how that works. Guys being out on the field, young rookies, guys who haven't played in the NFL, you know, that much, and they're getting live ball snaps, you know, out on the field, man. That's really cool. That's really cool to see. And well, all jokes aside, y'all know what I'm getting at. Y'all know how I get down sometimes. I'm a little petty, but I think that. With Clark Phillips, though, like the really cool thing about him is he's real sticky in coverage, man. Like I really like that. And when you talk about he's aggressive, like he's a little handsy, you know, I know I can probably gonna get him in trouble, you know, with the yellow laundry a little bit, but I like that though. Like he's like right in those wide receivers' hip pockets. As soon as that ball coming, boom, he reaching over top trying to knock that bad boy down. That's what you love to see from a cornerback spot, man. And for him to be doing that, like from an instinctive standpoint already, like, and then you talk about the run support coming up, not being scared to come up and make a tackle, even though I'm not the biggest guy on the field. Yeah, man, like that was a cool sight to see, and also it was cool to see Taquan Graham out there getting some snaps. Zach Harrison was out there getting snaps in the second half. Yeah, it's cool to see the young guys mixing it up a little bit. That's cool. I like that.
Okay. Well, we'll see what's cool to see in a couple of weeks. I guess we're like 2.5 weeks away from our next postcast, Jarvis. Where
September 10th, man.
Yeah,
man, I'll miss y'all, man. I'm gonna miss y'all people out there.
Yeah,
we're gonna do ourselves. We can't do postcast.
Yeah, what are we gonna do with ourselves? You know, what are we gonna do? Well, we will be back September 10th. Live immediately after that Falcons win against the Carolina Panthers.
Strike 0. We on there.
Yeah. So
we gonna have a good time regardless. So, you know, win or lose, we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, I think that's part of people's problem, Jarvis. We're having way too much fun. But they aren't watching it as much fun. We're sitting here having a good old time, even when the Falcons lose.
Yeah, man. Like,
you know, it is what it is. Like, hey, that's why you guys tune in. We just hear us talk whatever we're talking. So make sure you tune in September 10th, 4:15, whatever the time is.
Yeah,
Eastern.
4:05, 4:07, wherever. You know.
Check us out on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Live after the show, you can check it out, the audio version on Locked On Falcons. And of course, you know, if you want to get more insight into this game, and of course, certainly want to get more insight into the next game that the Falcons play on September 10th, make sure you tune in to Locked On Falcons all week long on your preferred podcast platforms. Make sure you check out Jarvis and Tanitra on ATL Day Ones, John Chuckery on Hitting Hard, all on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast. Is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.